Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast. We're the Commander Clash crew. Me, Tomer, Seth, Krim, and Richard all discuss Commander-related topics. And today, we are going to be discussing Salt. Saltiest cards in Commander. And this is going to be our personal cards that make us salty. And we're going to be discussing them because obviously we're going to have differing opinions on all these cards. And we're going to talk about them. And then we're ultimately going to rank them in a tier list because, you know, the internet loves tier list. So first off, our tier list is going to be a little bit different than our usual ones from previous episodes. We're going to be doing a salt tier list. So at D, we have basically sugar water, where it's like, we don't find this salty at all. The idea of it ever being salty is just like, it's silly to us. We're happy when people play it. C is about average, where it's sometimes fine and sometimes obnoxious. So it really depends on the context of the card or that particular type of card. Like if we're talking about, say, counter spells, we're not talking. Some counter spells might tilt us, but some, or the vast majority, might not. So that would be a C, an average. Then we got B, which is slightly salty, where we're not happy about seeing it, but we've accepted that it's part of the game, and we don't get that salty about it. Then at A, we have tilted, where we're not happy to see the card, and we'll probably target the person who cast that spell first, or prioritize them more than if they didn't cast that spell. And then finally, at the coveted S, the maximum sodium scale, we would probably just stop playing Commander if we saw this every single game. This is a card that, like, literally, it's the maximum tiltage, and if we saw it all the time, that would be it. We'd find a different game to play. All right, so that is the ranking scale. And we're going to kick things off with a Commander Clash staple in terms of controversy. Something that definitely makes some of us quite salty. And this is Rustic Study. This is one of the most played cards in Commander. Absolute staple in blue. It's an enchantment that says whenever an opponent casts a spell, they have to either pay 1 or you get to draw a card. And there's a couple of cards that are similar to this, Rustic Study, these tax effects. Mystic Remora is another blue enchantment that does that based on non-creature spells. And then more recently, White got a version of this with Esper Sentinel, which is the first non-creature spell cast each turn. So for me, I'm just going to kick things off. I hate this card. I'm using my S right off the bat. Rustic Study, every single time I see it on the battlefield, I hate it so much. I go full tilt. I try my best to kill it, and then I'll probably try to kill the person who cast it as well. This card just... That's too much.
True. Really, you try to kill me because you know I won't pay for it. I know how this works.
Wait.
I've seen this happen.
Didn't Tomer kill the Rustic Study instead of an Ugin once?
I do remember that, and then we lost horribly because of it.
I don't care. That's how much it tilts me. Well, yeah, Seth is correct. The only person I hate more at the table than the person who casts a Rustic Study is the person who's like, I'm not going to pay for it, and then just cast all their spells into it, because that's how you lose. That's how you just give the blue player infinite cards, and they're like, oh, well, he drew 6 cards. What's 20 cards once he drew that many? Might as well cast all the spells. And meanwhile, the blue player's like, oh, I just drew into Fierce Guardianship, and I just drew into Force of Will. Oh, I just drew into my combo. Oh, I'm wonderful. How wonderful is this? And it's just like, please, no,
but Tomer,
I can't.
What if we mill him out, though?
Yeah.
I
can count the number of times we've successfully milled out the Mystic. Isn't Rustic Study also a May effect?
Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a May effect. You may draw a card. Oh my god! We actually have used that logic. And oh my god! I hate this card so much. And the fact that it's like one of the most popular cards of all time in the format, it just means like you get to see it all the time as well, right?
You're darn right.
What do you feel about? How do you guys feel about this card?
Richard, about you or Seth?
I give it a C. This is just a normal Magic card to me. Have you tried not paying for it? You can just ignore it. It's a totally optional effect It doesn't have any impact on my games of Magic. And then sometimes I almost put it down to a D because I think it's kind of funny when it shows up and everyone gets all upset about it. So I actually sometimes kind of enjoy it a little bit. But really, I think these cards are perfectly fine.
Here. I like that. I like
you
that.
just like it because you like how tilted I get when you're not the controller of it.
As somebody who plays it often and plays against it all the time, I love it all around. I much like Seth, it's just a normal Magic card, right? And it's even funnier when there's one person that's absolutely tilted by it, right? But legitimately, it's just like any other Magic card. I mean, obviously it's powerful. It's not like it's a bad card, right? It's very powerful. But to me, it doesn't feel like I'm gonna throw my collection out the window or anything like that. This is just okay, cool. I mean, we should answer that, but cool.
This is an S because it's way too powerful, but it's not just that, right? Like if you just paid 3 mana, drew 10, like a normal card like Sphinx's Red, we'd move on. But instead, we bicker for the rest of the game. And you argue about, oh, it's okay for me to do it, but it's not okay for you to do it. And my play is worthy of them drawing a card. My play is not. And it's tilting playing with it. It's even more tilting watching back Commander Clash, how everyone thinks whatever garbage card they have is worth the tax, right? They're like, oh, but guys, I'm progressing the board, so I'll play straight into it. And then the next person has to do it, the next person has to do it. And like theoretically, the card is okay, but it never works out in practice. No one ever agrees. Someone thinks, their play is the play to save the game, and it's okay to go into the tax, and then it all falls apart. So it warps the game too much. It's too powerful.
You could just say Seth. You could just say...
Yeah, but
I saw you, Krim. I saw you, Krim, say like, "Oh, Seth, you played like a Durley Ram spell. That wasn't worth it. But here, let me play my 3 mana 4/4. That's totally worth it."
Hold on.
Right? And then the next person has to do something too because they're behind, and then it just keeps going and going. So I think legitimately this is the only like true S. Like I would actually quit Magic if there was an emblem that started with Rustic Study on the battlefield. Like every game, I'd be like,
new Eminence card.
You're playing like a different game now, right? It's like devolved, and then there's always this arguing about the correct play, and it slows down the game. Do you want to pay the one? Like it's just there's no. At best, it's an overpowered card. At worst, like it just kills your group vibe. So get it out.
I would prefer if it was pay 3 mana, draw 10. I would prefer that.
Because of the bickering aspect? Because I was wondering, because like Necropotence is literally kind of that, and that's not even on our list today. That's not even a card that we considered for being salty, and that's kind of a 3 mana enchantment that just draws you 10 cards if you want to. What do you think about the other two? Like, are those on the same S tier level for you, Mystic Grimoire and Esper Sentinel, or are those a little bit further down because they're not as strong, I guess?
I think Mystic Remora, I don't even play it in some decks, to be honest with you. Unless it's like CDH, right? Where I know there's going to be a lot of non-creature spells and stuff like that. Like, Mystic Remora just doesn't do much. And oftentimes I feel like I have to tap my mana down past the turn because of cumulative upkeep. And then Esper Sentinel is only once. It's only once, and it's unless your opponent's like beefing up this Sentinel, oftentimes it's just one, and it's only that one time, so it's fine. And it's on a body and on a creature type that, like, first off, it's a creature and it's an artifact, so it dies to numerous things here. So, I don't know. Esper Sentinel's nowhere near Rustic Study to me. It's nice on turn 1, but it definitely does not scale all that well into the late game.
I would say it's like a C or B at most. Like, the problem is, like, if someone's storming off, they pay 1 mana, and then they're good for the whole turn. But also, like, white is not scary. Like, if I fill the white player's hand with 10 cards, like, at the beginning of the game, it's like, what can they do, really? Like, they don't have Force of Wills, they don't have Fierce Guardianships. Like, it's not as scary as a blue player allowing them to draw that many cards. So, Esper Sentinel, I thought was really broken when it came out, but after playing with it in practice, it's like good, okay, right? But it's not, like, crazy, like, Rustic Study.
It's actually
the multiple
better.
Cards a turn is crazy.
It's actually better in 60 card formats. So I was surprised to see that. Like in historic and modern, it's way better there.
Yeah, and relevant.
And Mystic Grimoire is temporary because of the cumulative upkeep. So like there's a clock on this, and if you do keep it around, you probably can't cast the cards you're drawing off of it because you're paying that cumulative upkeep. So I think both of the other two are inherently way fairer than Rustic Study.
I would rank the others as D, sugar water. Like, have fun, go wild.
I would still say it's C. Like, if everybody just casting into Esper Sentinel, and Esper Sentinel's drawing 3 cards every single turn cycle, and it's not being dealt with, I mean, it's still bonkers. It's
not
one
bonkers.
Well,
it's
like
just a good Magic card. That's all it is.
If you spend 1 card and 1 white mana, and you draw 3 cards off that, that's already equivalent to an Ancestral Recall, right?
Yeah, that's power 9 right there.
So it can do really good things, and I think this card is still incredible, but I don't find it as obnoxious at the table because it doesn't hit creature spells. And I think it's a lot easier to get an agreement out of the table to just cast creatures, because first of all, almost everybody has a commander that's a creature that they can cast. There's a lot of alternatives. You can play around it a lot easier, and there's a lot less bickering involved around it. And also, like people said, it's only the first card you cast, so it doesn't snowball as quickly out of control as Rustic Study, and it's easier to kill. It's both an artifact and a creature, whereas the Rustic Study is an enchantment, and like if you're in black or if you're in red, your options of removing that is just limited. You don't really have a lot of ways of interacting with it. Blue too. I mean, blue can only like bounce it essentially.
I think we have a test to figure out what you think of this card, Tomer. You got an Utter End in hand. There's an Esper Sentinel and an Ugin. Which one do you kill?
I'll get the Ugin.
Then that's not that bad. It's not that good then, right?
So it's not a rank lower than
I think
Rustic
it's a
Study.
C. I think Esper Sentinel and Mystic Grimoire are C's. They're easier to play around. They're very incredibly powerful cards. Like obviously, like they see CDH play regularly, and I think they're more powerful in CDH metas as well. But I've never been super tilted by it. You know, it's a pretty easy ask to play around it. So that's like a C for me. But like Rustic Study is definitely an S. Like if every single game of Commander Clash was a Rustic Study game, I feel like that would not be a good season of Commander Clash.
Really, I'd say I'd be thriving.
Coming up, 3 mana commander with a Rustic Study stapled onto it, and it has hexproof for some reason.
Just give it Eminence. Eminence with a Rustic Study trigger. Just that's the next level. That's 2022 Magic. All right. I think we were pretty thorough on Rustic Study and its ilk, so we're gonna move on to another fun one. This is Opposition Agent, aka the Crim Special. It's a black creature with flash that says whenever an opponent you control goes to shuffle their library, you get to control what they search up. You get to control the searching aspect, and you get to exile that whatever card is like a legal target of it. Like you get to control the opponent. You get to search whatever card they can look for, and then you get to keep that spell. Is the way I said it, which was not as good as probably reading the card.
Yeah,
but whatever.
All right, that was a good summary. That was
gist of it.
3x the like.
While an opponent is searching their library, they exile a card. Each card they
You
find,
basically
you may
cheated for
play
them.
those
Triple
cards
down
for
on
as
this
long as they're in
explanation.
exile. You may spend the mana as though mana of any color to cast them. Boom, easy. And it's 3 mana. It's flash.
First
What do we
try.
all think about this?
This is definitely S on my salt meter. I hate this. I'm just kidding. No, this card is like dog. This is just sugar water. This is D. This is how many? Okay, outside of Tomer forcefully casting into what is known as an opposition agent, and like you see Seth play around it. You see the table play around it. Right? I've played into it. Right. And it doesn't even feel bad. Right. I'm just like, oh, that's pretty good. All right. I mean, you got to punish tutors. You got to give the people's elbow to the player that wants to play a tutor. And this is the best way to do it. I think there should be more of this. I'm happy to see you do this because, once again, that shows that you care about tutors too and that you despise tutors as much as I do. So
You
know
just
what?
love it because you hate green, and green likes to search the library for lands.
First off, I
with
hate
the battlefield
green. I like
tapped.
dunking on like tutor effects. Once again, demonic tutors not in green, although it will be probably next year. And then, so the thing here is, legitimately, it's there should be more effects like this at the table. I'm all for it. Please play more of it. As a matter of fact, I'd let you play a playset, a full 4 in your commander deck against me.
I agree with Krim. Like at worst, it's a 2-for-1. You can get 2-for-1 by anything in this game, right? You can play around it, and like yes, maybe if they put it on turn 3 and you have nothing but like fetch lands in hand, you're a bit
Punished
posed
for not
there,
being
but-
on a budget.
Yeah, but aside from that, like, if you want to cast like some giant like 8 mana tutor and tutor up 8 things, you get hit by an opposition agent, well, like that's too bad, right? But they could have counterspelled it, right? They could have snapcast their counterspell. They could do many things that 2-for-1 you in that case. So I actually not only like don't care about this, I want other people to play it. Right, like I'm happy to have Crim slammed on an opposition agent and just let it sit there. So like I'm actively rooting for it, and I don't think it detracts too much from the game. You always have your commander to play. You have any number of non-tutor cards to play in your hand and in your deck, so you're not really shut out from like anything aside from winning the game. Like when you tutor, you're probably tutoring to win the game. So like boo-hoo, you don't win the game, right? So I'm fine with this effect.
I mean. So I'm the only one who's, I guess, a big down. Wait, sorry, Seth, you didn't say.
Oh yeah, I have it as a C. I'm not happy to see other people play it, but it's just kind of a normal Magic card. I don't want to see 20 more of these and people start with a emblem of opposition agent on the battlefield or something. But I think it's easy enough to play around for the most part. That worst case, one person gets got one time, and then the game goes on as normal until someone kills it. So I have it as a C, just a fine Magic card.
So I'm going to buck the trend a little bit, and I swear I'm not like super like. I have a lot of like the salt at the very beginning of this list, but I swear I get far less salty as we go. So I put it as a
Who hurt you this
I put
morning,
it as
Tomer?
a B, slightly salty, where I'm not happy about it, but I've accepted it. And like, yes, I have got by Crim multiple times by this card, and yes, that has been some tilty experiences where like he has one opposition agent in the 99. How does he always have it? He always has it. And then like I go for like a rampant growth and he spends the opposition engine on that. And I'm like, yeah, I get a little bit tilted about that. Yeah, a little bit tilted about that. You're right. But I accept that I should have played around that. Like that's on me. And I also think that anti-shuffling effects, or anti-tutoring effects rather. Why did I say shuffling? Anti-tutor effects are healthy for the format. Because obviously, like, it's a 99 card format. Obviously, it was meant to have a lot of variants, but as we keep getting more and more efficient tutors, it's nice to have an answer to that in multiple colors. And it was also nice to have an answer to green, as Crim said, like land ramp doesn't really have a lot of avenues to get punished because mass land destruction, first of all, isn't the most efficient way of dealing with land strategies because sometimes they have like the most ways of recurring from the graveyard, but also the community doesn't like mass land destruction. So that's kind of like that path is not something that can be really explored because the community has already said for the past decade we don't like mass land destruction. So that's not a way to fix it. But having ways of denying tutoring effects is a way to hurt green without
and black.
Messing with people's lands.
And black. There's
black.
A lot of tutoring in like Mystic Tutor.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of tutoring that just goes on outside of like white. White has like 2 tutors, I guess.
What?
Well, I mean,
Oh,
colors
yeah, I guess
has.
white does have some tutors. Actually,
White's really good at tutoring. Yeah.
Every color wants to tutor, right?
Yeah.
And much like you said, Tomer, this is a singleton format. I want to play a singleton format.
So the only reason why I'm a little bit salty about this card is I think it's a little bit too pushed. And that's my only complaint about it. Like Aven Mind Sensor, I think is a totally balanced card. It works much the same way. But when you're putting it compared to Opposition Agent, it's like totally night and day. And that's the only reason why I'm a little bit salty about it, is I think the card is just a little bit too strong. I would love to see an Opposition Agent, exact same text, but 4 mana. Or if it was a 3 mana version of it, I would want it to be something a little bit closer to Aven Mind Sensor. But I feel like this card is just a little bit too high in terms of the power level. That's the only reason why I'm a little bit salty about it. But otherwise, I like the design.
It has to be, because the way that Magic is moving and Commander is going, it has to be more powerful. Because, first off, Mind Sensor is almost too weak. Any tutor can probably hit off the top 4, right? Demonic Tutor can still get something off the top 4. And then, the thing here is it has to be cheap enough to where it goes underneath the majority of tutors, right? Because if it's a 5 mana anti-tutor when all tutors are like 3-4 mana, then it's like, okay, cool. I've already done my part.
But do you really need to take the card?
Yes.
Do you really need to 2-for-1?
That's
the thing. Like, you could just deny
that's what makes it playable, right? If it didn't do that, you wouldn't play this card.
Is Aven Mind Sensor not playable though? I play it.
I don't.
No one plays Aven Mind Sensor.
Yeah,
it's a very rare include.
The thing here is this needs to punish people enough to where they actually have to be weary of tutoring, right?
This was 4 mana though. Would you play it if it was 4 mana?
It goes under. It's too overcosted at that point, right? Because like Stranglehold, if you gave Stranglehold flash, I probably still wouldn't play it.
Yeah, 2 for 1.
Mind Sensor.
Stranglehold.
Mind Sensor is in 9% of decks. Opposition Agent's 12. So I think people do play even Mind Sensor.
People play it, but should they play it? Right? Like not like it's an assault card. I just think it's actually a bad card.
So I think there's actually an interesting question here because Richard mentioned like, oh, people are just tutoring up their finishers to win the game. If that's your take, then Mind Sensor is fine because odds are you're not going to let your opponent get their combo piece in their top 4 cards. But if you're just trying to get people like Blood Moon style, then Mind Sensor is not going to get it done.
I agree that I will play Mind Sensor just because it's an additional way to prevent tutoring. As you know, I just want to shut that down. However, if you were to ask me on a power level, I think it's not good enough. I just play it for some sort of redundancy.
Like you play this card, you're gonna get targeted. And Mind Sensor just gets you targeted without giving you any real advantage, right? So you just like painted a big target on yourself without making any progress, right? Which is why it's not a good play. Whereas at least Opposition Agent, you're getting something back. So, you're getting rewarded for you're policing the board essentially, right? So that's why I don't like Mind Sensor or like Stranglehold. You can play Stranglehold if you really hated tutors, right?
Sucks.
But like who would play 4 mana enchantment that gets you nothing, it gets the table pissed at you and kills you, right? Like that's you got to get something out of this.
It also dunks you.
Yes, it is strong, but I think you do need to get something out of it. Like if it's just let's say it's a 2 mana flash Opposition Agent with no steal, I think it's too weak, right? Like you hose someone, but then you just made an enemy and got nothing back. You got a 2/1 creature that does nothing, right? So.
And 4 mana would be too much for this exact... Like, if it was literally the exact same card, but it was 4 instead of 3, it would...
I think it's still playable, but it's just weaker, right? Like, you just keep adding on mana symbols. It just gets slightly weaker as you keep doing it, right?
If you pay 4 for this, it's got to do a lot more. You got to be able to cast it for free. Whatever.
Okay, that's too good now.
Right? No. I'm being serious.
Broken.
Like, I think that like
you're
if
casting a spell from your opponent's deck for free, Krim.
Yeah, why
yeah,
not?
that's and you get to tutor up the spell that you want. That's insane. That would be insane.
Shouldn't have tutored,
played Magic.
Shouldn't have tutored.
Should have sat down at a table with Commander.
If your opponent has 3 mana open, you just don't play the game anymore. That's all. All right. Well, so that was okay.
Which, by the way, if tutoring is the game for you, then I've got bad news for you. Magic is a lot more than tutoring.
I don't understand. But anyway, all right. We'll move on. We'll go to one that is a little bit more on the salty side for the table. This is Krim. You put down extra turns, specifically 1 card.
Oh well, Nexus of Fate is a very, very fine Magic card. I loved being able to sit through that standard and then historic and then never getting away from it and then just sitting there turn after turn as it shuffles away. The thing is, this card shuffles itself back in if it even hits the graveyard, which you can't respond to, right? So this card is kind of obnoxious, and it is the poster child of extra turns for me. But there are things like Expropriate, which is essentially extra turns, right? And then you have all the extra turn spells that exist in Commander. All of them are miserable. Every single one of them, because turns already take long enough. All right, turns take long enough. The last thing I need to see is the same person take the same long turn 10 more times. So I despise this. If you're talking about things that actually ruin the game, I think extra turns do ruin the game. For starters, Opposition Agent, there's the illusion of you playing the game, but you're somewhat playing the game, right? And counter spells, all of that, stacks, all of that. But you are actually not playing the game if I take every turn, which means I should like this more as I think about it.
So to be clear, that's an S for Krim.
Yeah, this is high on the salt.
Do you not play Alrund's Epiphany in Standard?
I hate Alrund's Epiphany in Standard, and it's actually the main reason Standard. It's a stain on Standard right now.
I feel Krim's been damaged by Constructed through Nexus loops and Alrund Epiphany loops.
I haven't played
playing Standard in the last couple of years definitely doesn't make me happy about extra turns, but playing Commander, it's the same, right? Like, how many times is your Rico going to reveal the same temporal trespass stupidity and then do it again, and then to take some extra turn, do it, like, find another extra turn spell, do it again, and it's just like, your turns take so long. Oh my God, hurry up. I already am impatient on Moda. You watch me misclick all the time because I'm like, go.
What does everybody else think about this card? So that's a definite S for extra turns from Krim.
It is fundamentally, it ruins the game. How is no one else?
I love looking at
maximum salt too, right here.
This is a blue
I am
card
the
that makes
salt
Krim
mines
angry.
when it comes to extra turns.
I love this card now. I'm gonna put it as a D.
I have it as an A. They do make me pretty salty. I can't think of a single Commander game that has involved extra turn spells that I have found to be fun. I don't quite have it as S tier because I think there's other things that are more miserable, and I think I could construct scenarios where an extra turn spell could be kind of fun. I don't think I've ever actually seen it happen in practice, but I could envision like a fun game involving an extra turn spell. So yeah. And the other thing is, it seems like when there's an extra turn spell, it is almost always a whole bunch of extra turn spells, and someone's abusing them in some way to try to like copy them or chain them with their commander. Yeah. It's never just like, oh, I take an extra turn to make a land drop and then you can go. It's always like way worse than that. So yeah, they make me pretty salty too.
I guess like the one thing that I will say that is like kind of okay are the extra turns where like you lose the game after this, right? Like
the red ones?
The red ones, yeah. Like I think those are fine. And those are still abusable, but like fine.
What was the one? Obika is the one that abuses it the most, right? Obika is the one that says like you can end your turn.
But then if you remove their Obika, then it's like, well, you lose the game, buddy. Sorry, right? Like
there is a risk involved.
Right, there's some kind of risk. The blue ones are just like, whoa, you want to see me do it again?
I didn't know the Krim, the green player, was so anti-blue, but I'm here for this.
I mean, look, blue has its parts.
So I totally agree with both Krim and Seth. Like, the problem with extra turn spells I find is, first of all, they're very difficult to interact with because they're a powerful sorcery usually, and just most colors are just not able to actually combat it or really interact with it in a meaningful way. We don't really have like the opposition agent for extra turn spells, right?
Ugin's Nexus.
We got Ugin's Nexus, but it's not quite there.
It's not quite there.
Yeah. So that's problem A. Problem B is that like when I see an extra turn spell, either it's a deck that is just stacked with them, like Seth said. Like you're not going to just see somebody running like a time warp, just like in their randomly in their deck. If they're going to be running an extra turn spell, either it's going to be the ones that are just like obnoxiously good, like Expropriate or Time Stretch, or they're an extra turns deck where once they've landed the first extra turn, now you have to wait like, I don't know, 10 minutes while they constantly chain extra turn after extra turn after extra turn. Yeah. And that's kind of like the problem. It's like the moment you see one extra turn spell, it's like, either it's Expropriate, which that card is just like busted, or it's Time Stretch and they cheated it out, or they're extra turns on deck, and that's not fun to play against. So like I put it as an A because, like in theory, yes, there could be, you could just cast an extra turn spell for value or whatever, but in reality, that's not how extra turn spells are being used in Commander. And almost always, if they're going to be taking an extra turn, they're going to be taking at least 2 extra turns, and either they win the game outright or they're going to win the game in like 10 minutes from now once they finish taking 10 extra turns. So I'm not a fan of either of those. It does get me pretty salty, but it would be nice. I think I would get less salty if more colors were able to interact with it meaningfully.
I am curious. Like,
right,
I noticed that you said this is like not. You said opposition agent isn't playing the game. Do you feel like you're not playing the game if you play against an extra turns deck?
Well, opposition agent, right? I don't think is not playing the game.
Oh, okay.
I just think the card is too strong.
That, it's like, oh, I guess I won't play the game. Yeah, right.
No.
Like, okay, but like,
but you wanted one where they cast a spell for free, and I'm like, what the heck is this, man? I'm never allowed to cast a demonic tutor again, I guess.
Correct. Correct.
Richard,
right.
What do you think?
I have this as a C. You guys are like way too salty. Like, yes, when they cast it and they chain them off, they win. That's their win con. That's the deck, right? Like, it happens, right? But it doesn't take that long for them to win, right? Maybe it takes them a couple minutes to go through a couple turns, but it's a win con, right? You get to 8 mana, right? You get to 7 mana, and you somehow have the ability to loop it. That's your deck. Like, it's fine. Like, don't let the Narset player like make it to that state, right? So I don't think it's that bad, and it's not ubiquitous. It's like in like a handful of decks, right? And those decks are the decks Tomer said, right? You're built to chain extra turns together. It's not like you're playing it for value, like standard, right? Like it's in one specific deck. It's a lot. Like, yes, you can't counterspell it if you're playing white, but you know what? You can kill them before they get to this point, right? So I actually think it's just a normal Magic card. It's a win con. There are plenty of 8 mana spells that lose me the game. Like, is taking extra combats just a salty? It's the same crap, right? I untap. I declare blockers again, right? You're just chaining them together.
You can fog extra combats.
Are you telling me that you don't get salty at all when somebody casts Expropriate, Richard? Or it's like, either I Blade and Thievery you 3 times or 4 times. Either I Blade and Thievery you 4 times, or Blade and Thievery you like 3 times when I take an extra turn, or I take 4 extra turns. It's like, what?
I also have seen people just cast an extra turn spell to fish for another extra turn spell. It's not like they're going to end the game, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's not deterministic. That's my problem with it. Like,
right.
It's not. It's like eggs or something in Modern, where you always have this like 0.001% chance of like, they could fizzle here. So it's not like you can. And plus, there's like a taboo against scooping in Commander because you want your opponent to get to do their thing or whatever. So it's not like you can just scoop it up. You got to sit there for 20 minutes while your opponent like does all their stuff and has all their fun, and then maybe they hit another extra turn spell, which they will, but they could technically draw 15 cards and not find one. So you got to like stay engaged and try to have fun with it. So I think that's my issue. If it literally just like killed me, then sure, but it doesn't literally kill you.
I will say it's fine in 1 versus 1. I love my Elrons for Epiphany.
That's a very saucy take. All right, next card.
All right, yeah, let's keep it going. We were going to talk about counter magic as a general idea because a lot of people find counter magic as a idea salty, inherently salty. But we're gonna narrow it down because that's that's a big topic. So we're just gonna talk about possibly the saltiest counter magic in our group, and that's Fierce Guardianship. Which now that we're talking about that card, I'm just gonna change my rating a little bit. Fierce Guardianship is a 3-mana.
That's a major upgrade, by the way.
I swear I'm not salty. No, it was different. All right, we're going to talk about counter magic soon, but we're going to talk about the salty of the salty one. Fierce Guardianship is a 3-mana instant blue spell that can counter target non-creature spell. But if you ever command on the battlefield, guess what? You can cast it for free. So it's essentially when your commander is on the battlefield, when you have your scariest threat on the battlefield, guess what? You got a free spell that can counter basically anything important. Ooh, waka waka, fun times.
Okay, so like you have this ranked as what, Tomer?
I put it as an S. I think
we should spill the beans. Tomer
and
Seth have it as S's.
I also have
Let's
it
call
as
it design
Krim and I have it as C.
Here's the thing. Here's why I think Fierce Guard. First of all, I think free spells, if you make the effect good and not super situational, they're an enormous design mistake. They're like eminence. Like,
they are situational.
You should be so careful with what you have as free spells. And Fierce Guardianship, I'm sorry, does not match what a free spell should be like. This is absurdly pushed. This is like modern commander power creep, the card, Like, literally having a negate that you can cast for free when you have your commander out, when you're most scary, it's bad. Like, just imagine all the powerful blue cards, all the powerful blue commanders, the strongest ones that you can think of, and now suddenly that commander is 10 times harder to get rid of because the moment you have your commander on the battlefield, now you have a free negate. So if anybody has any board wipe, any removal spell or anything, it's that much harder to deal with. It's such a stupid card. I hate it so much. Why? Why did they know free spells are a problem. They know free spells, and we're like, I guess negate is fine. It's like the fog one's fine. Obviously, it's super narrow.
No one plays that one.
but it's fine. That's what a free spell should be. You should actually have to think about what cards you want to add to your deck. This one's just like, oh, I guess I'm in blue, and I'll put this in. Like it's like literally a staple. I hate it so much. The design is everything that I hate about modern Commander power creep. Everything I hate.
Seth?
Oh man. Boy.
I also am other S tier ranker, and for me, it's all about the design, honestly. Every time I see this card, it makes me cringe because it reminds me of exactly what I want Wizards to not do with Commander, which is printing these forced auto staples. We got to sell a Commander deck, so we're going to print this busted thing that refers to the command zone and would never naturally be in the format. You can Force of Will me all day. Perfectly fine with that. Force of Will, that's like a D for me, a C for me, whatever. Go for it. Go for it. That's fine. But every time I see this card, it just makes me sad because it reminds me of my fear of what Wizards could do to Commander. And since they've decided to start monetizing it and printing cards for it, it's it's just such a horrible direction for the format to potentially go. And this is a card that you see the most. All the cards from this cycle do that to me to some extent, but this is the one that shows up every single game in so many different blue decks. So yeah, the effect is kind of fine in some weird way. I agree that free spells should be more narrow and all the stuff Tomer said, but it's not so much the effect because you can Force a Will me or Force a Negation me. It's more just this card in specific I absolutely hate.
So I have it as a C because, okay, so what Seth had mentioned there is there are free spells. You can Force of Will, you can Force a Negation. These things exist, right? But prior to this cycle of free spells, I'm going to be honest with you. I really didn't cast my Commander. I wanted something in Commander to make me cast my Commander, right?
And it's a free negate?
Legit. Well, not just the free negates.
He doesn't want to tap out. He needs to have counter magic up at all times.
Right? But then think about it, too.
It makes sense.
In my Humans deck, too, I love Flawless Maneuver, right? I think Deflecting Swat usually gets cut because it's not powerful enough, but I do think that cards like that are cool. Because your deck is focused on your commander. You should be rewarded for casting your commander, not be afraid of casting your commander. Oh, if I cast this, it's going to die. It's going to cost 50 mana. I'll never play it again. Or you know what I mean? So the thing here is I like this cycle of spells, except the green one because that doesn't exist. It never got printed. I like this cycle of spells because I feel now like I can actually play my commander into a sea of, a pod of people, right? It's not 1v1. This is 3 other people I'm playing against. I have to have a tool that can allow me to fight at least one spell when I tap out and play my big threat or commander or whatever. So that's why I love this. I don't think it's not like it's a weak card or a bad card. It's still very powerful. And I would cast it just as a 3-mana negate on its own. But the fact that it synergizes with my commander is huge. And I like that. So I understand why you don't like it, because it makes sense why you wouldn't like it. But for me, it's just with my philosophies on how I play the game and how I think that you should, once again, you're building a deck around this commander. You want to play it, right? You don't want to have it get countered back or you know what I mean? Destroyed or whatever. So I love this. I think it's fine.
So I think I agree with all of you, but I landed a C because in my mind, power level does not mean salty, right? It is a very strong card. It's an auto-include in every blue deck. I don't want Wizards to keep printing this, right? I agree with all those aspects, but that doesn't make it salty, right? There are plenty of strong cards in Magic, right? And I like Krim's point where previously, if you have a commander that's important to you, your only play was to play Spooky Boots, right, beforehand and equip it and hope you're good, right? Or you wait an extra 2-3 turns to have the mana to protect your commander before you cast your commander, right? So this gives you a tool to play your commander and then protect it. So yes, it is very strong. I don't want to see this, I don't want to see more of them, but there are plenty of strong cards in Magic. So I don't think this is any worse than that, right? It's just an auto-include and it's expensive and that's annoying, right? But you play it you played a counterspell. You could have had an additional mana and played a Swan Song. So this card was 10% more powerful or something. Right?
The difference between paying 1 mana and paying 0 is freaking enormous.
Of course, but that's a power level thing, right?
But when you're saying there's plenty of powerful counterspells, how many counterspells are better than Fierce Guardianship?
Force of Will.
But I'm saying there's other powerful things you could be doing, right? You could play Teferi's Protection. 3 mana, I save my whole board.
But then you need 3 mana up.
Yeah.
I think
This is just
Crim's-
free, right?
But Crim's like love of Flawless Maneuver, I think, is a good example of why this card is so disgusting. It's like Flawless Maneuver is a great card, but it's fairly narrow. It can only protect against something dying. But even then, it doesn't protect against all removal. Like a Sword Splasher is going to still work. This is literally Flawless Maneuver because it will stop any board wipe or any removal spell being targeted. Plus. It gets literally any other non-creature
But
spell.
So if we take the top 10 most powerful cards in Commander, this is probably in there somewhere, right? I haven't actually made the list. But would you consider the top 10 most powerful cards in Commander the top 10 Saltiest? Like, no, right? There's a disconnect between like a Necropotence, very strong, but not necessarily salty, right? Like, this is just like you played a counterspell. You could have played Force of Will and went down an extra card. You could have played Pact of Negation or whatever, right? Like, this is just a stronger version of it.
Better than all of those. I do tie power level
card.
too.
This is a powerful card, but like
I definitely tie power level to Salt. Definitely do. Yeah,
I feel like it makes me
why
salty.
I don't like it so much.
It makes me salty because it was designed to be a top 10 card in Commander. It's not like, oh, you made Force of Will 20 years ago and it's a top 10 card in Commander. It was like, hey, guess what? Give us $50 because we just made this new top 10 card in Commander.
Yeah, well, that's
like,
the
that's
Wizards pushed
that bothers
narrative,
me.
chase set, expensive card, right? I still think this is meta. I've seen people tilt out of the game for all the other cards we've listed. I haven't seen someone tilt out of the game for Fierce Guardianship yet.
All right.
I just die a little inside every time I see it.
Seth is dying on the inside.
All right.
I laugh so I don't cry. I laugh so I don't cry. I laugh so I don't cry.
Editor cut. Seth is crying in the corner. No one ever sees it.
Oh, Fierce Guardianship. That's cool, man.
That's a great card. That's a great Imagine
Love it.
card.
That's cool, man. All right, next turn. All right. Yeah, it's cool.
All right. We'll move on. Richard, what do we got next?
All right. Narset / Notion Thief. So card draw denial, and then the previously banned Hull Breacher. And then, do we care about these cards without wheel effects? Does anyone find them salty without wheels? So no one finds them salty with wheels, but with wheels. We again have the Salt Brothers, Seth and Tomer at S.
Okay, I'll take this. I'll take this one for us, Tomer. I'll take one for the team. So here's the thing: without wheels, these cards I think are fine. Hating on the person who's drawing a ton of cards, that's perfectly fine. The problem is, even if your opponent might not be playing wheels, you have to play like they are playing wheels. And if they do have wheels to go with this, it's essentially Splinter Twin, except way more obnoxious because they don't kill you immediately. They just make it so it's impossible for you to win while they get a million cards and they get to do everything. So it's like a really salty version of a combo kill that doesn't end the game right away. So yeah, I think because you always have to expect a wheel, because it's correct if you're playing Notion Thief or if you're playing Narset to have wheels in your deck. Why wouldn't you? It's an easy 2-card combo that just lets you win the game on like turn 3 or something. For me, it is my least favorite play pattern in the entire Commander format. This is, if I had to pick one of these things that was my saltiest thing, it is this one. That's why we banned them last season of Commander Clash. This is bar none.
Banned me.
Well, you're the one. You are the one that tends to play these cards all the time. So, but yeah. So this is my highest ranked one on the entire list. I can't stand these cards with wheels. Without wheels, hate on card draw. That's fine.
Weird, because I played them without wheels, and I got to hate it. Like,
but you did wheel
you
a few
have
times.
wheels in the deck.
So then
That's
done
why.
it like
once
You have the
during
wheels
Chaos
in the deck
Week.
and we see it.
But you have it in the
Chaos
deck, and we
Week.
got to play around it and like play this whole sub game about if Krim ever casts a card, we lose.
He has it.
Chaos Week was the only week where I had it, and I'd even cast it together.
That was the only time we caught you. That was the only time we caught you.
No. The only, like, that's legitimately the only time I've ever had Windfall together. If you look at my deck list, we went over the stats episode. You actually saw my deck list. There was never a Windfall. It was just Notion Thief and every way to hate out additional draws. So, like,
I don't trust you.
I think that these cards are like on their own are totally fine. I have issues with wheels entirely, and that's why I don't play them. I think wheels are annoying, but I don't think these additional like draw step cards are that problematic. The most broken thing I think I've done with this is I had Jace Bellerin and I +2'd. I party Jace, then I drew. But other than that,
It's called party foul.
that is a party foul. But other than that, these are fair because there's lots and lots of things. I mean, may not feel fair if you're the white deck because you already have little draw as is. but the thing is, I feel like so many things like creatures nowadays have draw a card stapled to it. So many things have draw a card stapled to it. So I want to, once again, if I'm playing a pod of people, not a 1v1, I want to be able, I think more cards should exist that make it so you can keep up.
What about the combination though? Narset plus wheel.
Narset plus wheel, I don't like wheels, so I guess I would rate that. Even if I did play against Narset wheel, though, I'd probably say B.
Yeah, I think so. I think originally, if we just went with like Notion Thieves, we were all like basically D's and C's. But
Yeah.
Narset wheels, I would say B. Like, it's mildly annoying. It's a win con. They won the game, and it takes a while to win, but you can still claw back. And you can claw back more easily than someone chaining off extra turns.
Yeah.
So it might drag the game longer, even though you really have no chance. So I could give it a B. I don't think it's S tier, though. I do think that most people do pub stomp with these cards, and they bring them into games where they shouldn't be bringing them. But if I was playing high level commander, someone did this, fine.
Oh yeah,
low level
CDH,
commander,
go away.
I'm like, it's annoying, and
Yeah.
if you play half your combo piece, I'm gonna kill you. But I mean, it's a thing. Like, yeah, it's
If
a thing.
this is CDH, I'm not tilted by anything on this list, really. Well, maybe Rustic Study still. Maybe Rustic Study still.
That's the one.
That's the only card that would actually tilt me in a CDH game, I think.
All right,
Maybe
next
this
up,
is me. All right,
Armageddon.
this
Saucy.
was a surprising one. We got 2 S's, a C, and a D. Finally, I'm going to just say, by the way, finally, I am at the D. So there you go, not salty Tomer.
You had a
We
very
finally
high
got
sodium
there.
level for the
We
first
finally
40
got there.
minutes.
The sodium has gone down.
Your doctor will be
alright?
happy with your sodium levels.
Yeah.
So
All right,
Armageddon, 4 mana,
yeah.
destroy all lands. Seth and I are at S. I don't think Krim and Tomer know what they're talking about at C and D. So if literally every game came down to an Armageddon, like, you can play around it, right? Like, I play Armageddon, like, as a once in a while fun thing, right? And I use it quote unquote
Once in a while.
I don't
You
know,
guys are, like,
Richard.
5
I guess
times
once in a while
last season.
responsibly, right? Like, I'm not the guy that turn 4s Armageddons and locks us into a 5-hour game, right? Like, I try to actually get a position of winning and then Armageddon. However, people won't do that. They will abuse it. They will play it as like a middle finger to everyone else. They will try to do it, and then they will just slow the game down, and the game will take forever. If you have an Armageddon player at the table, now you got to slow roll your cards. You got to like play a lot of mana rocks. The game just like takes 5 hours now. So for that reason, even though I actually like this card, like, this should be banned from Commander. If it was in all of our games, we would not have a good time, right? This is S, right? Like, yes, you can play around it, but nah, right?
The person who plays the most Armageddon puts it as an S.
And I know, I choose it for like once a year special, right? I'm like, are these guys getting loose? Like, here we go, right?
What about
like, I would not
Jocko
bring it every week, right?
What about the
This
other
group was
land
getting too
destruction you had?
chummy. Let's Armageddon.
I mean, for me, I don't see how it's a whole lot different than the wheel thing we were just talking about with Narsets. Like, it's the same thing in reverse. Like, sure, you still have cards in hand, but you can't really cast any of them or do anything with them. So I feel like if every game did come down to an Armageddon, I don't think anyone would play the format, honestly. And it's very different than in 60 card formats, but when I think of Commander, I want the whole table in general to try to have a good time. And I feel like mass land destruction is one of the easiest ways to make sure that at least some of the people at the table aren't going to end up having a good time. Like, someone's going to end up feeling bad, not enjoying the experience. I feel like this, out of all the cards on the list, is probably the easiest way to end up with someone not having a good time playing a game of Commander.
Maybe it's just because I never draw any lands past my third. But the thing here is,
Krim
I
set
don't-
up for this. All his lands are still in his deck.
Grim always
I've been
plays
saying
around,
no.
always play around Armageddon naturally.
I'm land stuck again. I know you got Armageddon. No, like, legit. I think the land destruction as a whole is fine, and especially the more green players at your pod, the more this should be allowed. And then on top of that, the only land destruction I have a problem with, I think, is Decree of Annihilation, because you can cycle that. That's much harder to interact with. Now, if it were any of the other ones, like Ravages of War, Armageddon, it's a no.
Can I counter it with Fierce
Yeah,
Guardianship?
I feel like Krim evaluates
Salt,
cards
not
through the
salty.
context
That's
of always
the
having
criteria.
untapped Always having untapped mana in
There's
the
always
counter spell in
Boseiju
hand.
ready to Armageddon you, right?
Regardless of whether or not I have the counter spell, though, right? Like, I think, like, for fun and whatnot, like, I don't mind. I mean, I've gotten Armageddon tons of times. We literally just got Armageddon by Vince the other day. And like, the thing is, I still won through that, right? The thing here about Armageddon and land destruction in general is, I don't know, I just don't feel that bad when it happens. It feels, maybe because I've seen the darkest parts of Magic, so I'm just like, okay, whatever. I'm like hardened by it. But the thing is, it just, yeah, I get it. It stifles play. It obviously slows down a game, but I don't know. I mean, something's got to punish all the ramp that goes on at a table. And 90% of the format is like mana rocks anyways, or mana rocks, mana dorks, and like whatnot. So like, I don't even think it's that problematic to me. If when it happens, I just shrug it off. It sucks. Well, back to it.
Yeah.
Or I lose.
I don't know. I think you guys convinced me that it could be a C, but like,
it's at least a C. I mean, come on. D, though?
I think I can see. Yeah. Well, okay.
You
so
had it at
here's
C, though? Or
here's
you had
the
it
thing.
at D previously?
I think
Tomer
in the
enjoys
past,
Armageddon showing up.
Tomer's one that gets salty when I play Armageddon in my deck, by the way.
What?
He's
No.
always one that calls it out.
No, I'm just saying you're the we have to make sure you can't keep getting away with it. That's the thing. So here's the thing is I haven't in the past like 8 years of playing Commander, I haven't seen Armageddon being misused a single time in the past 8 years. Maybe I'm just lucky, but there's everybody keeps saying like the hypothetical situation of somebody just trolling the table and casting mass land destruction without a way to back it up and win the game. And I actually experienced this when I started playing Commander a decade ago. Literally a decade ago, I remember distinctly there was one person at the play group who really liked trolling the table with a mono red deck. It was like a bad dragon deck, and he had just a bunch of land destruction spells just to troll. And yes, that wasn't fun to play against because he would just cast it without having any board state, and people would just kind of sit around and do nothing.
Funny.
But
because
like
dragons are like 9 mana.
I know it was a very dumb deck. It was a different time. But like every single time, Richard, for example, because I think Richard's the only one who casts Armageddons in our table. Every single time Richard casts Armageddon, it's because he has the best board state at the table, which is what it makes sense. You have the best board state, and now you want to make sure your opponents cannot answer that board state. What do? You remove all their mana, so they no longer can answer you, and you just sweep up the game. Usually, when somebody casts an Armageddon, the game is over in like 2 more minutes. You know, they have a board state. You do not have a board state. Nobody has lands anymore. The guy who casts a spell just attacks a couple times, and that's it. And I'm totally fine
so
with
this
that.
is like
I think
Nexus
that's
of Fate, right? I still need like 8 combats, which is 8 turns, right? And second of all, it's like Rustic Study. If everyone just played it like
8
Athalia,
turns?
the card is fine. If everyone played Armageddon as a finisher, it's fine. But people do not do that. And second, it's very easy to go land, swords to plowshares your clock, and now here we are for another 2 hours, right? Like, it's not that hard to answer the board, right? Or like land Toxic Deluge. Congrats, right? Now we are at, the start of the game again, but 2 hours in, right? So it's very easy to undo that master plan, even though you've done it correctly, right?
You can undo it, but like I personally, maybe I'm just super lucky, but every single time I come across it, I see Armageddon just being as a finisher.
The only people that play Armageddon are super responsible ones today.
That totally should be how Armageddon happens, right? I mean, if you're in red and white, you don't have counterspells outside of like a few, like Tybalt's Trickery, yada yada yada, right? Like, so you can't like legitimately fight back against some of the colors. You can't fight blue. You can't fight, you can't fight green, and it's like absurd like resource advantage, right? So being able to just like lock down a board with like one big threat, like you did, Tomer, with World Slayer and all of that, and I mean, like outside of like some misclicks and punts, you should be able to close the game out, right? And I think at that point, once you've got the board state, why not blow the lands up? And that should be, I think that's fair game. You dunk on the blue player, you dunk on the green player. Why not?
I mean, I feel
back
like
it up with a fierce guardianship, then they can't even Toxic Deluge you. Boom.
World Slayer at least
Guardianship
takes some
wins
work.
again.
Like, you at least need some work if you're World Slaying. I feel like Armageddon's way more brutal than that. I think the bigger issue is like, I think people just don't play it anymore. I don't put it in decks because I don't trust myself. Because I know if I'm about to be the first person out, I'm definitely just gonna slam why would I not slam the Armageddon and just like peace out? Like, have fun, guys. Like, enjoy the next few hours. I'm gonna go get a coffee. Like,
that's pretty. But that's
why
pretty
wouldn't
good.
I do that? Why would I do?
Like,
That's
so I just don't put
Grim and
it.
Seth have done
So I
this
just
multiple
don't-
times with other cards. Right? I'm dying before I go. I'm just gonna mess with you guys.
What was
So I just
Right?
don't put it in my deck because I know I would do that. Like I don't trust myself to not do that, and I don't want to be that guy. So I just can't play it.
What was the week? I think it was like
Yeah.
Theros Beyond Death week or whatever, and I was playing Purpros. I just put Bear of the Heavens into play just for the fun of it.
All right.
I mean, I think if we played it every week, Commander Clash ratings would tank.
I think viewers don't like it. I think definitely as a casual point of view,
But viewers
it's very high
represent
on
the
the scale.
players, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
amongst us, we're okay because we
Well,
play
do-
it correctly and we expect it. But if you just bring it to a random table and you just Armageddon, even in the winning position, I think people would be incredibly salty.
People are salty about a lot of things in Magic, though, right? Like the counter spells and whatnot too are involved. So
Yeah, but there's many things you can do in Magic. Did you really need to bring Armageddon? That's the question, right?
All right, fine. The Armageddon lover hates Armageddon. This is what I hear. It's fine.
Pretty much. Only I'm allowed to use it. No one else could use it. End of story.
well, you,
All right.
you ensure that by blowing up everyone else's
Yeah.
lands.
He can't cast Armageddon if I Armageddon his lands. You see?
All right. Speaking of resetting the game by 2 hours, Cyclonic Rift. Okay, 2 mana, bounce something. 7 mana, bounce all of your opponent's stuff. Overloaded. Instant speed. Everyone's favorite controversial card. We all have it as C except
How is
for
this
Seth at
controversial?
A.
I don't know.
I have it at A. I feel like do you remember Standard last season where Ugin was in the format and you
Yep.
play a nice game of Magic and you build a board and things were going back and forth and then all of a sudden your opponent plays Ugin and it's like none of the things you did for the first million turns of that game actually ended up mattering because this one card just swings the entire game. That's what Cyclonic Rift does to 3 opponents at instant speed on the end step before the person's turn who's casting Cyclonic Rift, so they get the most value out of it. I think that it is a really salty card because sure, it's really powerful, but as Richard said earlier, power is not the same as saltiness necessarily, but it just invalidates all the things you did for the rest of the game at instant speed pretty efficiently. And I think that's what makes it salty to me. Like nothing you did before it matters because it's all gone.
I
It's
mean,
a
in a
little bit
multiplayer
worse.
game, there should be a board reset.
But
There
it's a
should
little
be-
bit worse for one person though. The person's whose end step it is before your turn, they get to discard down to hand size as well.
Yeah.
Well, you
that's
know-
probably me.
Dredge has
I
a
think
new
a-
toy. Right?
I think board resets are fine. If Cyclonic Rift was a sorcery, it would be a C for me. I think that would make it a fair card.
I think the fact that blue needs, like, white has Armageddon, right? Like, white has, like, Wrath of God.
Sorcery,
Like,
Sorcery.
But these colors have signature spells tied to them, right?
which are
So-
sorceries. Yes.
Which are sorcery, sure. But blue is instant speed. And the thing here is that's why it's more than 4 mana. I think it's okay. Like, it's a powerful card, by the way. I just don't think it's, like, salt-inducing for me, personally. Like, it's happened. Obviously, all of us here are Cyclonic Rift survivors, right? but the thing here about it is it just never felt like it was too broken. It's like blue needed something. Sure, here you go. Have it. At instant speed, it makes sense flavor-wise. Okay. It sucks that it happened, but like everything in Magic, it's just another board reset to me.
So why do you have it as C instead of D, Krim? So
I mean,
it's sometimes obnoxious?
It's not like it, like, as I said, it sucks. Like, I mean, I don't like my board getting blown up, but or bounce back. But at the same time, that's just like the nature of Magic, right? People interact with you, so I expect it. Is it D? No. Like this is a card that is on people's radars, right? It's on people's radars, and it's obviously a big enough, like, all-star to pay attention to.
I have it as a C, as average. It's sometimes fine, sometimes obnoxious. That's what we're calling it. I think
Magic card.
it's very it is obnoxious in terms of the person who has to discard down to hand size. I think that's pretty brutal. Like everybody else is getting their entire board reset, and then one poor person is going to just lose like a bunch of permanents. Like they essentially lost a bunch of permanents in that thing because they happen to be the one
wrong seat.
In the wrong spot. Yeah. And like the fact that it is instant makes it a bit over the top, and also the fact that it's so difficult for most of the colors to interact with that. Like you think of indestructible, you think of hexproof, you think about all these combat tricks that can let you survive most board wipes. none of them work against mass bounce. But they're actually, I'm actually wrong. There are a couple cards that I really like that I think I hope to see more of, and maybe have other colors have access to it. And that's like phasing out. White has two really powerful ways of doing it. Taverius Protection is a really good answer against Cyclonic Rift. And also more recently, they have the best one is Guardian of Faith, which it's a creature, 3 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you can phase out any number of other creatures you control. It doesn't phase out all of your permanents, but it does phase out your creatures. So if you have a big board state, especially if you have tokens, where if they get bounced, they're gone, you can phase out the rest of your board, and then Guardian of Faith is the only thing that gets bounced back. It gets bounced back to your hand, and you can reuse it later, which I absolutely love. So I feel like introducing more ways of trading fairly against Cyclonic Rift would be really nice and would make it less obnoxious. But right now, it is very strong, but it's also like 7 mana. I don't know. I'm kind of on I've mellowed out on it over time because it is a 7 mana spell. If it was like, well, you could cast it for free if you have your commander out, like, okay, fine, then yes, but like
we unbanned it the last 2 seasons, right? And it like Richard's casted it, people have casted it. I think you did, right, Tomer, last season? So
probably.
I don't know. Yeah, it just doesn't feel that bad anymore. I don't know.
What do you think about that, Richard, though? B?
I upgraded to a B after hearing all these arguments. So I don't think it's that broken. I don't think it's actually that good. It's a bit of a win more card. Like if you have a slight board advantage, you bounce and then you try to finish the game. But if you're losing, like, last time we did this, I memed about who cast Cyclonic Rift and loses. Like I've done it like twice or like 3 times in a single game and lost still, right? Mm-hmm. And the problem with Rift is it slows the game down. I'd rather have it destroy everything, because when you destroy all creatures or all permanents, the game progresses. When you bounce everything, everyone just spends the next 2 or 3 turns redoing the last 2 or 3 turns, right? And then if someone like Snapcaster Cyclonic Rifts again, like you're just replaying the same mid game over and over again, and the game just drags on. So for that reason, I give it a B. Like, I'd rather it like progress the game in some way or finish the game, but instead it just makes everyone redo the last couple turns, which, like, like you're dying. I'm gonna stay alive by rifting, but I didn't do anything. Everyone just replays the same thing over again, and then I Snapcast a rift again to not die because I didn't accomplish anything, and then like it just goes on and on, right? So for slow play purposes, I don't like this card.
If you do start looping Rift, then I think that's where it gets super obnoxious. If you have like a way to just constantly cast Rift over and over again, then the salt scale goes up very quickly.
Blue has for free, right? Like Blue has so many ways.
Mystic if you just like Archaeomancer, Ghostly Flicker,
you can
or
also
whatever.
Flicker Eternal Witness in your Bant deck, right? Like like whatever.
Archaeomancer, Ghostly Flicker, and then you have just like, I don't know, like a Gilded Lotus that you're untapping with that. Oh my god!
I don't even mind that, because to be honest with you, if you're looping a spell, it doesn't matter which spell, it probably is going to be very good.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, moving on. We have an interesting one, Krim. I think this is an inclusion of yours, so take it away, Krim.
All right. Kodama's Reach is not the poster child I wanted for this, but it's the easiest example. Kodama's Reach, cultivate any one of these. Ramp. I hate ramp, and I put ramp at an A, because ramp is the dumbest thing to happen in Magic. Okay, like it is.
Wait,
absurd.
all ramp? Like you don't like Talisman of Dominance? You don't like?
I think Mana Rocks are pretty dumb overall.
Okay.
So I despise ramp, because like Talisman not as bad because you only play 1 mana. Like you have to pay the mana to get the Mana Rock. Ramp like this, where you're just accelerating, like a lot of new ramp also costs nothing as a deck slot. If your deck was only ramp, then that's obviously like I watched somebody win with just an Azusa, ramp, and Field of the Dead and cast Eldrazi's. That's it. Eldrazi's, Field of the Dead, and that's it. So that shows you that if you just play lands, you can win the game. And the thing here is ramp is absurd. The fact that you can cheat on the rules of playing 1 land a turn is dumb. Why would you do that? Like, how is that allowed at all? And like, How are people like? I think everybody's like, oh, mana drain. It ramps for blue. It's only one turn. Green does it every turn. You just don't notice it because you're so used to it. People
Llanowar
are so...
elves, the biggest mistake since Alpha.
Llanowar elf, a threat that you can kill. Not a problem. I'm talking about things that put lands into play. Put lands into play has always been annoying to me, and I've never liked it. Just because you're cheating on resources, and that allows you to infinitely win. It doesn't matter what I play after that point. Most people will blame, like, let's just say, hey, I ramp and I play the green primordial. Oh, it's the primordial. No, it's not the primordial. It's the fact that you got to, like, you now have 50 lands, and you can play primordial. You can play Steve on turn 11 plus 3 other spells, and all of it will be an Avengers level threat. Because you're so far ahead on resources that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the table does. You can actually go toe-to-toe with the rest of the table. It seems like a meme and like a joke, but nobody thinks about it. How do you lose most games to green? They're always ahead of you on resources. Always. Because
I agree with
ramp
Krim.
slides under the radar. No one thinks about it. There's it's
Ramp
fine, whatever.
is the most powerful thing you can be doing in Magic. It goes unchecked and unpunished, and it basically forces out all the other cards. Like, there's no point in playing any 3 to 4 CMC cards or 2 to 4 CMC cards because you really want to be ramping. Right? Anything you're playing in that slot is a utility card, right? So for that, yes, ramp is overpowered, but to scapegoat Kodama's reach, like, you need to remove all of it, right? You need to remove cultivate, reach, rampant growth, etc., right? But you can't. It's kind of part of the game right now.
I don't think
right?
they're like you need to ban them. I just think that their salt meter on them is high.
They're not salty. It's just very powerful. I wouldn't call it salty, right? Like,
For me,
I don't know
it's
that
salty. I don't know what you're
you're
talking
salty about anything green. I think
just
the general
drowning
public
in the
is not going to care if
Himalayas.
Kodama's reach,
Yeah.
even though it's the most powerful
because
thing to be doing.
they don't know that it's hitting them as hard as it is.
But they do know, and then they're also casting their own Kodama's.
They just want to cast their spells. Yeah, well, do you actually think Commander would be better if there was no ramp? No signets,
Yes.
no mana rocks,
Yes.
no rampant growths. Like,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
playing one
Yes.
land a
I actually
turn.
do.
100%.
Really?
You would play
I
all
think
the
it would be
janky
way
creatures that
worse.
I play.
Shadow
Right?
Mage
They get pushed out
Infiltrator?
by ramp.
Friendly
right?
format right there. If I can play
It would be. I think one of the initial appeals, though, is that it is Battlecruiser Magic. People want to be casting their big 7 mana and 8 mana spells.
Yeah.
You would have to build a deck very fundamentally different to get to those spells, and you would also have to accept like an extra hour to your games, right, to get to that point if you
I don't
want
mind
to
long
play.
games.
What if you just played with
Those
all the
big
fun 2 and 3 mana spells in Magic? Like,
Because then it would
what
just be
happened to
Legacy Light, wouldn't it? Like you would just
No,
be
you
like,
would play like 3 mana 4/4s, right? That you
Wouldn't
would
we be
never play
playing-
in Commander because you'd rather just play 8 mana
no,
10/10.
wouldn't you just wouldn't
Grinning
you just play,
Demon
like
wouldn't
Delver
be a
decks
meme,
and stuff like that?
And I have
like,
no bias with my tattoo, but the thing here is the fact that like a 4 mana 6/6 would be absurd, right? It would be absurd. Like, oh my!
I mean,
God.
wouldn't we end up being tiny leaders, essentially? Like,
No.
isn't that Commander with no ramp is tiny leaders, more or
Commander
less?
with no ramp means that we just like the mid game comes a little bit later.
I mean,
And that's
I would
fine.
say, like, wouldn't every commander that's, like, more than 5 mana just be basically stone unplayable? And along with
Yeah.
all the ultimatums and all
I
the
think you
Genesis
gotta
waves,
like maybe have
gone.
artifact ramp, but no land ramp. So you
No
can
land
interact
ramp
with the
is the main
artifacts.
thing, right? Like, yeah, like rocks are fine. Rocks are fine.
But then doesn't
I've
that
always
just punish
wanted
green?
yes.
I've always wanted a variant
play
of
artifacts.
Commander where you're not allowed to run any card that says search your library. I feel like that would be a really interesting restriction because green doesn't just have land ramp. Despite, green's most iconic ramp is land ramp, and it's the safest ramp. But not only do they have mana dorks, but they also have really powerful auras that attach to lands like Overgrowth and Wild Growth and Fertile Ground and all these stuff that are very powerful ways of ramping. That nobody really plays because lane ramp is so good. So I feel like green would still be way ahead of the other colors in ramps, even if you remove like ramping growth and whatnot.
But the thing here is, I can then like those are attached to enchantments and permanents, right? That
You can interact with
right. You
it.
can interact with those, and I think that's fine. Like all things in Magic should be interactable. Like I think that you should be able to interact with everything in Magic, even an
Play a
emblem.
Stone Rain, Krim. Play a Stone Rain.
Like
I
Cyclonic
can't
Rift.
because the
You can
table would
definitely
get mad at
interact
me if
with
I play
Cyclonic
land
Rift.
destruction.
They need
Right?
to tower it up. like Siphon Stone Rain for every opponent destroy one of their lands, and then you put a land into play.
I love it.
Everybody should be able to interact with everything, but Cyclonic Rift is absolutely okay. Okay.
You can't interact with that. You Guardian of Faith. There are things...
you scoop up your hand, then you discard down to hand size. That's how you interact with it.
And if that's your way of interacting with it, then that happens, right? But the thing here is like I can't play land destruction in Commander.
Just counter it.
I mean, okay. If I counter it, then that means now they're like that's only one of like 32 different like Farseeks, right? Yeah. So that's why I think there should be more things like opposition agent.
I think the ramp conversation is interesting, but I feel like it just punishes green for no reason because these are the cards you play in your green deck. So I feel like it just like targets on green because everyone else is still going to get to play their mana rocks.
Right? Everyone else plays mana rocks. They get wiped away with an Onduin version. The green player is sitting there full mana base, laughing all the way to the bank. Right? Like that's the problem with the ramp, right?
And I agree with
accelerating turns 3 or 4. It's just they don't get reset when everyone else gets hard reset.
I agree the answers to Kodama's Reach and those stuff, like green land ramp specifically, is severely lacking in the format, always has been. But I don't know. The only ramp that I've
effects, baby.
Yeah, the only ramp that I've ever been against is really fast mana. Basically any spell that generates more mana than it costs to cast it on the turn that you play it. I think those cards are usually a problem. And that includes like Sol Ring and Mana Crypt and stuff. Those are things you can still interact with. But I think those are the only ramps that I would be concerned with. But like ramping growth and stuff, like I do wish there were more ways of interacting with it. And I don't think I feel like it would be really cool to play a variant of Commander with no searching your library and make it true singleton. In that regard, where like the intent was to have high variance. I think that would be really cool. But as it is right now, it's never really bothered me.
All right, next card. Everyone's favorite, Janeth Magistrate. 2 mana, 1/3. You cannot cast spells, or your opponents cannot cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. So asymmetrical, shuts down other commanders, shuts down flashback, suspend. I don't know what else there is, like exile, like the red card draw, foretell. Basically, you can only cast cards from your hand.
I love this. I want more of this at the tables.
Yes, please.
Like more effects like this at the table, please.
Because I love this card so much.
So the summary is everyone finished changing their ratings. Richard at A, Seth at B, Krim and Tomer at D. I guess I'll start here because I'm the saltiest.
Yeah.
I feel it goes against the spirit of the format. Like, yes, you can play around it, right? Like, yes, you can remove it, right? But what happens when it's like turn 20 and you're top decking? They play Janeth Magistrate and you're out of gas. And what you would normally do is you get a land, great, that's more land for your commander. You play your commander, right? You're out of gas, you got nothing to do. You're removing the central point of someone's deck. So if it said like except commander, you can't cast any other spells except from hand or command zone. Perfect card. But because it hits on commanders, I feel it kills the spirit of the format.
Doesn't Oubliette do the same thing? I just had that happen to me, right? But that doesn't bother me, right? Because I think that this card, first off, if you're on a top deck war and you eventually lose to a 1/3, that's it. Other than that, it is literally just a 1/3. Assuming there's no, like, you're not locking people out or doing anything wild like that, and you're just playing a 1/3 that denies you from casting anywhere else, this card's not even a real big threat. It's just it's a way for slow to the ground decks to fight and combat threatening commanders. It's a way to just fight and fight against an opposing pod. And I like it a lot.
Isn't this card not good enough based on your criteria, Richard? We were talking about opposition agent, or I'm like, is even Mind Sensor not good enough? And you're like, it's not good enough because all it does is it pisses off the table, they'll attack you, and you don't get any value out of it. So you're just going to get people annoyed, not do anything, and get hit with it. Isn't that Janeth Magistrate though? Isn't it like not even worth casting because it doesn't do anything? It doesn't grab the commander and let you cast it or anything. It just prevents.
What if you're playing a deck around your commander and someone else throws a Janeth Magistrate down?
Shutting
and no
down
one else cares, and you're the only one that cares about it.
Just remove it.
And you don't have removal. Now you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs for the next 30 minutes as you top deck one turn at a time.
Don't go all in on your commander. I think that's the biggest problem with commander design these days.
But that's the whole format. right?
You shouldn't be all in on your commander though. I think just like it oversimplifies the format. I think like when everything in your entire deck revolves on your commander to be on the battlefield, it's either all or nothing. Either you have your commander on the battlefield and you just win the game because you have a commander on the battlefield, or you don't win the game because your commander isn't on the battlefield. And I feel like that's where commander is being headed. And I think that's really bad. I think Drain of the Magistrate is actually very good because it forces you to like play around the idea that maybe you should have a backup plan in your 99 cards. Maybe you should have some sort of backup plan to your commander being shut down. Like I think it's the worst thing ever to have a commander just devolve to be like, do I have my commander? Yes, I win the game. Do I not have my commander on the battlefield? No, I don't get to play Magic. Because like then it's either it's basically set up the format to be a feel bad, because either you have your commander on the battlefield and you win, or you don't. There's no in between. I feel like Dragon the Magistrate pushes that.
But that's not the way Magic. Like they have tried to get rid of every effect that prevents you from playing your commander. Remember, like the tuck rule, like if he goes to the graveyard, he goes back to the command zone. Like it's all revolved around allowing you to keep playing the game empty-handed because there's a commander to play. And
play a removal spell.
This
kill
breaks
the 1/3. It has no.
And what if you're empty-handed? Right? Like what if you don't have, like, you're gonna play like 20 removal spells for like a Janeth Magistrate, right? Like, and it's not one of those things that scenario, is though, right? Symmetrical, right? Like Krim can have removal in his hand. He's like, Janeth Magistrate's fine by me. Right? It's like getting a turn 1 rest in peace on you, right? You're like, this is miserable, right? Except you're a graveyard deck, fine, right? But this is like you're a commander deck, which is every commander deck, right? So
most of my decks do not just fold if I don't have my commander on the battlefield. Like if your deck does fold to not having your commander on the battlefield, maybe consider being a little bit more well-rounded.
I think that's too gatekeepy. I think that's too gate. I mean, I agree. Like we could say this about everything, right? Armageddon, your deck should not fold to a single Armageddon, right? Like your deck should not fold to a single Armageddon.
Well, if your entire deck falls apart to Drain of Magistrate, then fine. That is the. It's not necessarily.
Standard? This is Commander, where you build a deck around a legendary creature.
It's not gatekeeping. That is the hard counter. Like if you're an all-in graveyard deck and I put Rest in Peace on the battlefield, you got. I mean, you're all in on your graveyard. If you have no way of dealing with a single permanence,
Rest
then
in Peace is probably more threatening to a graveyard deck than this.
Wasn't the argument in favor of Fierce Guardianship that we want our commanders on the battlefield because they're the heart of the format, and this allows me to play my commander, and then I can use Fierce Guardianship, and I feel safe getting my most important card on the battlefield, and then
this doesn't negate that argument though, because the thing is, yes, it is important that you want to get your commander, and that's fair, but this is a way for aggro decks to fight your commander, to go underneath you, right? Because aggro doesn't exist, and this is a good way to have that. On top of that, I think you can still have both in the same format. Yes, heart and soul of the format is to play your commander, right? Check. So how do I combat that? I play Janeth Magistrate. And then so that means now the person who's relying on their commander, like Tomer said, should be ready to play against this card.
I don't like how it just punishes decks for doing what the commander format's about. I put it as a B because it really depends on the deck I'm playing. I know I've had some games that I play and Janeth Magistrate shows up and I'm like, sure, whatever, that's fine, like no big deal. Then I've had other games where it's been really, really frustrating because I got a deck that does actually care about my commander and I was planning on casting it this week, and this shows up and everyone else like doesn't care and it lives and you don't have the removal, exactly what Richard was describing, and it ends up being pretty salt inducing. So I don't like I don't know. I think I lean towards Richard's argument that in Commander, we want people to be able to play their commanders, and that's something that you shouldn't be punished. Compared to like Blood Moon, which punishes non-basic lands, to something like Choke that's just like, haha, you decided to play blue, I gotcha, and punishes basic lands. Like, I feel like this is a Commander equivalent of that. Like, sure, it's good to punish things, but I'm not sure that playing your commander, which is the entire point of this format, is something we want to be punishing.
It's not even like a punish, right? Say punish, I feel like is a little harsher than what it does. All it does is really just force you to like actually have, like Tomer said, a backup plan, a way to deal with things. And this,
it essentially delays you. Yeah. Like it's going to die.
Yeah.
Like it will die. And it will garner a lot of hate too. And also, I'm bringing back the point again, it's like opposition agent. If I'm a green landfall deck and you drop an opposition agent on me, I can't play the game because like 99% of my thing is searching my library for a land and triggering all my landfall stuff, right? Like that's what my deck does. And if I don't have a removal for
deck, this is like literally targets every
but
deck.
Opposition Agent
right?
gets you the card too. It's already a 2-for-1. It's like 10 times better. Dragon Magistrate basically just shuts down your commander. It does other things, obviously. Like if you're casting stuff from exile, it prevents that too. Or you're casting from the graveyard, it prevents that too. Like it doesn't just hit commanders, but like I usually don't even run this card. Like I'll run it in CDH.
Well, I run it
I'm not going to run it at a random table because 90% of the time, all it does is it gets people annoyed at me. And then they kill it, and they kill me.
I want to die
like,
this one. I don't want to talk about this anymore. So we're gonna throw it to the audience. So if you're listening on Spotify, come to the YouTube video. If you're on YouTube, come to the YouTube video. We'll pin a comment. I want to see what the general audience thinks. Is Janeth Magistrate like good for the format or bad for the format?
I love it.
I want to see like if we meet you at a Magic Fest and I slam turn 2 Janeth Magistrate, are you gonna like never use Goldfish again or like? What is gonna happen? I'm kind of curious.
You're in an all-in commander deck that wants to just pop off and win on a single turn when you play commander. Well, that's a shame.
Baby.
I vividly remember a game I had where I got by Draneth Magistrate. I can't remember the scenario, but I played a deck about my commander. Someone made it indestructible. Yeah. I knew it could never go away, and I just had the least fun I've had playing a commander game in a long time. Like it's on Commander Clash. I don't know the episode number, but it happened not that long ago. So I have personally been salty with this card.
Well, I'm eager to hear everybody's thoughts, but we'll move on to probably one of the most controversial cards on our entire list. This is gonna be Sol Ring. Everybody knows what Sol Ring is. It is like the iconic, the spell emblematic of the entire format. Every single precon has it, so it's ubiquitous. It's in literally, I think it's like 99.99% of all decks. You have to have a really good excuse not to have a Sol Ring in your commander deck. And I noticed one person has it as an S, so Krim, take it away. What makes you so salty about this card? S.
I mean, I didn't actually dish out that many S's this whole time. This is my second S, right? So I think this is
the Fate Sol Ring.
And yes, of course it's Sol Ring. I think this, and like, it's not just Sol Ring. I think the reason why I put this at an S, it's fast mana as a whole. I think fast mana is miserable in the format. And I think I've kind of voiced that before, like, you know, when we talked about things that should and shouldn't be banned. And I think this, outside of being grandfathered in and is just now like the poster child of Commander, if it weren't for that, I think this would have to eventually get banned. But because it's the poster child, I know it never will. So I think this is just, it's way too good. It's way too good. The 2 mana is on like for 1 mana, it's not even like you aren't investing anything into it. You're just getting, it's all upside. There's no downside to playing this. So like you had mentioned, it's cheap. It's reprinted in every deck. There's no reason you should not play this. I despise this card because, once again, it cheats on resources. I don't like Ramp, and I definitely don't like this card because this is 1 mana. Yes, I can interact with this, so this makes it a little bit easier to deal with. But the fact that it is 1 mana, the person that played it, I'm already down a card having to deal with this. Right? I'm already down a card having to deal with this. I just despise fast mana. So is it Sol Ring specifically that gets the S? No, it's fast mana because I also despise Mox Diamond, Mana Crypt, all those other things too.
What about rituals? What do you think about like Jessica's Will?
Jessica's Will's
Mana
fine.
Geyser. Mana Geyser?
Mana Geyser, obviously people are going to go off. It's very powerful in Commander, but I don't know. It's 5 mana.
Fair.
Sol Ring goes in every deck. Right,
Yep.
That's the difference between Mana Geyser and Sol Ring.
Fast mana goes in every
Urza Saga has made it more ubiquitous somehow, right? Like now you get to tutor it up for free, right? With
Only if you're willing to spend like $50 on a land.
Yeah.
How much is Urza Saga these days?
I don't know.
I think it's coming down, but it's still expensive.
But it's a very powerful card, but we've all played with it since day one, right? We're all used to it by now. So I think it's just like a B. We've accepted it. It's not going anywhere. It's like banning Brainstorm or something from Legacy or Vintage. Like it's not happening. Like, and I don't even think it's that bad, right? It's like okay, like the table will gang up. Like Phil casts like a Sol Ring every game this season. He dies instantly, right? So I don't even know that this is the right play to be doing, right? So yes, it's obnoxious. Yes, it's like top 3 most powerful cards in Commander, if not top 1, right? But it's not salt inducing. I mean, you're salty because you didn't have your own Soul Ring. That's basically it, right? Like
that is
still get
true.
to play your game. You're just a little behind the other guy, right?
I feel like it's an A though, because you definitely got to target the Soul Ring player. Like I target the Soul Ring player when we go around the table on turn 1 and one person plays a Soul Ring. That's who I'm attacking. Like,
are you salty about it, or are you just threat assessing at that point? You're like, that person is ahead on resources.
I'm salty.
Would you disenchant it? Let's say you had a 1-for-1 enchantment removal or artifact removal. I would
only if it's Dowsing Dagger. Come on.
It's tough because then you are down a card, like Krim said, and that is pretty painful to be you don't want to be the one to disenchant it. Do I want someone to disenchant it? Oh yeah. Do I want to be the one that spends my card on it? Not so.
You'll be happy if
much.
it dies to Vandal Blast, though, right? You'll be like, if
definitely.
I overload it.
I do think it is a little bit salt inducing though, along with this power level, because it just makes the game so swingy. Like I feel like we've talked about this for a long time, but we've had a lot of Soul Ring games since Phil started doing Commander Clash, and it does lead to these like arch enemy really swingy games. Either that person wins or they get taken out, and I just don't find that especially enjoyable play pattern. So I do kind of groan a little bit when anyone plays a Soul Ring on turn 1 in a game of Commander, because I'm like, oh no, like it's gonna be one of these games where we're playing this style again instead of like a more balanced game of Commander.
Yeah. I honestly, I take the same role as Krim on this one, where I think fast mana in general is the worst thing about Commander right now. I think it gives too much of an advantage for the person who went first, especially if they have like the Soul Ring start. Even worse if they have multiple things that's going on, like they go Soul Ring into a Signet or something like that. Because like everybody says like, yes, we'll gang up, we'll kill that person. But if that person like just does that on turn 1, nobody has any response on turn 1. Turn 2, they drop a threat that like either refills their hand or just is too hard to answer. Like the game just kind of either ends immediately or goes on a bit longer and then ends, and it's just like, I think the more fast mana we get, which we're getting every single year, I count also the rituals like Jessica's Will and stuff in the fast mana range as well. The more that we're getting every single year, the more consistent these absurd starts, the swinginess becomes. And I think this is going to be the biggest pressure point, especially starting in CDH, where like people are just going to win the game before other people get to have a single turn, but it's going to bleed over to casual. And I feel like Soul Ring and Mana Crypt and all those cards, they will have to be addressed at some point in the future once we've reached a critical mass of them and they've bled enough into casual. But we're not at that point, and I know that it's so emblematic in the format that I've just kind of accepted that the Soul Ring is part of the thing. Fast mana is part of the format. Eventually, I promise you, or I'm calling it right now, give it like 2 years, we'll get to a point where this will be the biggest talking point in Commander, and all the big content creators are going to be talking about it and whatnot, and it will be addressed at least. But we're not at that point, so I've just accepted it. I will attack the person who has the Soul Ring start though, because that's just correct threat assessment. But yeah. All right, moving on. We have a card that I know makes some people at this table quite salty. This is Insurrection. This is a old school powerhouse. I'm a little bit fond of it because it was in my first precon ever, the first deck that I ever owned in Commander. Political Puppets, Zedru the Great-Hearted, was an absolute mess of a deck, very weak, but it had one powerful card, Insurrection, and that literally won me all my games, was casting this 8-mana spell, steal everybody's creatures for a single turn. They have haste, and you get to attack, and you usually have enough to kill the rest of the table, or at least kill one person. It's usually kill one person or kill everybody for 8 mana. It's very, very powerful. I put it as an A, because when I started playing the game, Insurrection was like the go-to finisher for most red decks. And you wouldn't even have to be like a creature deck. You wouldn't have to be a sacrifice deck. You wouldn't have to have any synergies with it. Everybody would get to a board state when it was like turn 8 or whatever. Everybody has some scary stuff on the battlefield. You have 8 mana, you cast Insurrection, you steal all the creatures, and one person is just dead. It's like, wow, what an interesting game you all were having. I'm going to cast one spell with no setup whatsoever, no synergies whatsoever, nothing on my board state, just 8 mana. I'm going to steal all your creatures, and I'm going to kill at least one person, hopefully all three of you. So I found it was very anticlimactic, and I don't like seeing the game end with Insurrection all the time. But lately I haven't seen it much. I think we just kind of avoided it, honestly. That's why I put it as an A. I'm not happy, and I'll probably target you if I know you have Insurrection, especially if I'm a creature-heavy deck. Because I know if I play too many creatures, I need to play creatures to have a board presence, but if I play too many of them and you have 8 mana, I might just die. So I'll probably have to attack you if I know I'm on a creature deck, and I know you have Insurrection in your deck somewhere.
Okay, so here's the counter argument. I have it as a C. Insurrection costs 8 mana. Lots of things that cost 8 mana win the game in Commander. You name up a whole list of cards, and at least Insurrection actually kills me. It's not bouncing all my permanents like Cyclonic Rift and making us replay the game for a few turns or looping extra turns for 20 minutes. It's just killing me. There's a lot of things. Like, it's like crater hoofing me or something. Like, sure, it sucks that I'm dead, but at least the game's over and we can play another one if we want to. So this card, I don't know. I guess it is probably too easy because it is kind of a one-card combo in a lot of board states. But really, to me, it's kind of just another finisher. And at least it literally finishes the game instead of some of the other more salt-inducing, like, drag-it-out finishers that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. As we're talking about it, it actually went down on my list from C to D. Just because, legitimately, this is actually worse than some of the other 8 mana win conditions, or 9, right? Because if your opponents don't have enough of a board, you can't do anything. So you're just sitting with this clunky spell. And then at best, you may kill one person entirely, like send them to the Shadow Realm, but then there's still 2 other people. And then if there's enough of a board to kill everyone, well, that's awesome, right? That's hilarious. That's great. I love that. That's a big finisher. It's flashy. It's cool. So all around, it just seems like a fun card to have at a table.
I like that it kills you. Yeah. Like, you don't have to drag on the suffering.
That's what I hate. I agree 100% with Tomer. Like, literally every point he said. This is the only card on this list that makes my blood boil. Like, all the other ones, like Armageddon, Rustic Study, I'm like, it's not fun to play against. I don't really care, right? But Insurrection, to me, is the cheap way out. Like, we were all having a good game, forwarding our game plans, doing what our decks are supposed to do. And then someone comes around, does this like 8 mana spell that requires like literally 0 setup. Like all the other win cons, we say 8 mana wins the game.
It does require
None
setup.
of them actually win the game, right? Most of them
actually,
Most of them are like, I'm taking extra turns. You could fizzle, right?
Yeah.
You set wheel. The game is not actually over. This one, it's pretty, there are cases where it's not over, but it's over for someone, right? Like someone is most definitely going to die when this happens.
Game's got to end somewhere.
It's a cheap way out. Like, I don't think you just undo like the whole game. Like if I played like say like Skeleton Tribal and I had Insurrection in my deck, like I could do nothing for 8 turns, put 8 lands down, Insurrection, and win the game. And like I would never do that because I have standards, right? But if someone else did that, I'd be so salty. I'm like, where are your standards?
Face roll cards though. Face roll cards exist in Magic. Like, and
this one is so obvious. Like, there's no point to this, right? Like, it's so obviously like a face roll card, right? Like, there's no like I'm having fun putting together a combo, right? It's just literally that's it. Like, it's like 8 mana, you win the game on the text, right? You're like, what is the point of this card, right? So
it depends on your opponents having creatures,
it's
but like
feel bad
so
because you're essentially getting dunked on by your own cards. I think that's...
No, it's like the whole narrative of the whole game was thrown out the window. Like everything that happened beforehand, like did not matter, and you just one card won the game.
Isn't that like Craterhoof though? What's the difference between this and Craterhoof? Like you're playing the skeleton deck and you get to turn.
You had to build a board up.
You need creatures for this too. Your opponents do.
If you have
but what are the odds that no one has creatures? Right?
Very high.
If you have 0 creatures on the battlefield and you cast a
Craterhoof,
nothing happens.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Is like, what's another 8 mana spell that wins the game? Like, is Expropriate 8 mana?
It's like 7, or it's like 8 or 9.
I think it's 9, isn't it?
9?
I think it's 9.
I can't think of anything that like so consistently wins the game at 8 mana as Insurrection by itself.
It's like those kind of cards, right? Like you play a long game and someone expropriates. You're like, well, okay.
Yeah, I don't like.
Or you torment a hailfire. You're like, okay, cool. Right? Like, I guess. Like, that I think it just cheapens the whole experience. So I really dislike it.
The the Ugin argument of invalidating everything before the big turn where it happens is kind of convincing. I think I'll bump it up to a B. I think that is a convincing argument because
Crim's at
that
E
was,
now.
Yeah, that was one of the arguments I used for Cyclonic Rift. So I think for the sake of consistency, you are right. It does, or at least it can make all the previous turns not matter, which isn't a very fun way for the game to end. Although I still think, like, I don't know, it's not that much different than a Crater Hoof.
Yeah, I don't view this any different than a Crater Hoof. I knocked it down to a D, but if I could, I would just put it to an E. Like, legitimately, this is fine. And plus, you know what? I like it when people dunk me with my own cards. So you know what? Get it. Get it. Take my cards and lay it on me. I appreciate it.
It's an honor in a way.
Hey,
yeah,
I played
I'm either
those
like
cards.
a D or an A. Okay, so we got one more card to discuss, or one more branch of cards to discuss, and this one's possibly the most controversial. It almost started a new format. Ooh, so exciting. The Walking Dead cards. Hello. These were the initial Universes Beyond cards.
Do you hear that, Tomer?
Huh?
Collectively,
What?
everybody's sodium levels just rose a ton. Oh, man.
The Walking Dead.
Oh,
The Walking Salt.
I don't know if it's that salty
The Walking
anymore.
Salt.
Actually, this should be our second poll. Like,
I mean,
Yeah.
they rank really highly on EDH Rex lists. Like, all of them are pretty high up on there. I don't know how much of that's lag from a year ago, but they are generally considered to be pretty salty by the community.
Yeah, and these cards are still kind of rare. So for context for people listening or, looking at the screen right now on YouTube, the Walking Dead cards are the first Universes Beyond cards I believe they ever released. They were available only as secret lairs, so you had a very limited amount of time to order them directly through Wizards of the Coast. And they feature cards or feature characters and items from the TV show The Walking Dead. So they're not part of the Magic the Gathering settings. They are part of the Universes Beyond, which is basically any other franchise. So they're literally the Walking Dead franchise depicted on Magic the Gathering cards. And they were pretty controversial when they came out because, first of all, they're not part of the Magic the Gathering setting. They were first time we've seen Universes Beyond as cards, and they were also distributed in a way where you could only purchase it. It was a very limited print run. You could only purchase it from Wizards of the Coast, and after that, if you want it, you have to get it through the secondary market, where the prices could be ludicrously high. So people were mad about it different ways. I'll just say my quick take on it. I have no problem with The Walking Dead in general. I didn't like the way they distributed the cards as well. But I'm much happier now that they have a compromise where the new Universes Beyond cards they have through Secret Lairs, they're going to be exclusive as Secret Lairs. You have a certain amount of time to pick them up. We have, I don't remember, what's the new one?
Stranger Things.
Stranger
Things. Yeah, you can get the Stranger Things cards. You can only get that version for a limited time. Otherwise, it's going to be super expensive through the secondary markets. But they will have a reprint of the cards as Magic in Magic the Gathering settings in like 6 months from now. So you do have access to those if you don't care about Stranger Things or whatever. You just want the card itself. You will have access to it, and it's going to be higher supply too, the other way around as well. So I like that compromise. I just don't like Universes Beyond. I've still never enjoyed Universes Beyond. I feel like it kind of just like cheapens the Magic the Gathering settings when you bring other franchises over. And I don't want to see like KFC cards or whatever, or the Warhammer 40K or whatever.
Oh my god!
I mean. It could be like, you bring out the Burger King and you fight and you tap him to crew Ronald McDonald Mobile.
Where'd you get these leaks from, Tomer? Yeah, Wizards gonna come after us. What are you?
And like we've joked about
spoiler?
these, but like we literally joked about these when we saw The Walking Dead. But we have like Fortnite coming out, we have 40K coming out, we have all these stuff.
We saw it coming,
like,
actually.
I don't think like Burger King cards is like literally out of the question. I really don't. Like honestly. And I don't think it's good for the long-term health of Magic as a franchise. But you know what? Like, the last thing I want to do is make somebody feel bad for playing them. I will never, ever make somebody feel bad for playing these cards. If you like them, you like them. I'm not going to target you. I'm not going to feel salty about it and all that stuff. Play what you like. I'm here for you, and I want everybody to enjoy Magic. But I would have preferred if these cards did not, the Universes Beyond did not exist as a concept. But I'm never going to be against anybody who enjoys these cards and plays these cards.
My take kind of echoes some of that, in that I don't like the distribution model that it originally came out with, but they fixed that. Right? So as long as that, other than that, everything else was fine to me. I don't even care. Like, first off, with the multiverse and how absurd Magic's story is already, this doesn't bother me that it's in this plane whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, if you are salty that I'm playing this, it makes me feel even better, because I'm going to be honest with you, I will hit you down with Rick and then take all your salt to the bank. Because I think all these cards, though, they're not broken, right? Rick is powerful. Rick is the best of them all, but otherwise they're not broken. They don't do anything really that like actually like breaks the game, right? And then there's the people that come at it like, well, Negan, you know what he represents in the show. Yes, he's a villain, but these are the same people that will watch like The Exorcist with their children, right? Or something like that. Like, don't try to pretend that it was because like Negan's a bad character. We know he's a bad guy, yes, and the things that he's done are very questionable, right? And obviously terrible. But the thing here is, this Walking Dead, I think, was the reason why it's on there, and it's salty for a lot of people, is just because it's the first thing that wasn't Magic IP. That's it. I think that's all there is to it. And for me, I think it's kind of silly. Like, some people want to play these cards, and it always feels weird. Like, I've had people in my Discord ask me, like, hey, can I play this at a community night? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. It's like, well, how do you feel? How do you think other people will feel? And it's like, the fact that you have to come to me and ask me, like, how I, like, you know, like, because you're worried that people will be taking you the wrong way because you're playing this. Like, that's a failure on us as a community, right? That's a failure on us as a community. And that other than that, I don't see anything wrong with Walking Dead. Distribution model was the only thing. I hated how they distributed it, but they fixed that. So to keep it short and simple, I think this is totally fine. Play it at your pods. If somebody's that mad, just beat them with it so they get even more mad and stay mad.
I have it as a C, and I'm kind of along the same lines as Tomer. My big issue from the beginning was also how they were distributing the cards. We'll see. Hopefully the solution that they came up with will be a good one once we see it in practice. I think it'll work out. But I think I'm getting to the point where you just got to accept them as Magic cards, because it's happening whether we want it to or not. It's pretty clear that this is going to make a lot of money, and Wizards is full steam ahead. And do I think Magic is better for having Fortnite and a ton of different IPs in it? I'm not sure I'm convinced that it actually will be, but whether any of us really want those cards in the game or not, it's going to be happening, and we don't really have any choice but to accept them as regular Magic cards. I definitely think that it was pretty troubling that there were people who were like, if someone sits down with a Walking Dead card, I'm going to leave the table, or I'm going to tell them off, or something like that. That was the most disappointing thing of the whole Walking Dead saga, honestly, was to see some of those reactions from the rest of the community, because I think that's what's really against the spirit of the format and the spirit of the game and the spirit of what we should be as the Magic community. So my only concern is I don't really trust Wizards with stuff like this. I don't trust Wizards that if Mountain Dew or PepsiCo or whatever showed up to them with a buttload of money and said, you know, make a can of Mountain Dew advertisement Magic card, that Wizards wouldn't just pocket the millions and like ship it off. And so I can see, not to get into this slippery slope argument, but I could see how this could end up going badly. I don't think the Walking Dead cards do that, or the things that have been announced so far, but Wizards likes their money, and I just it does make me a little nervous.
Why is Mountain Dew the line here? Do you think they're not going to make food tokens with like Burger King or McDonald's? You know, like it's free money. It's so easy. They have a secret lair food edition. All these custom food tokens, and you have like one McDonald's, you have one A&W, you know, you have a Whopper food token. Like, why not? Why is that the line?
Goes to the realm of Disney. Lego Magic set coming up. But I agree with all of you guys. I will say that Salt should be directed at Wizards, right? If you're not happy about any of these cards, it goes to Wizards, not other players. We're talking about things like, you shouldn't cast Drannith Magistrate because it disallows people from playing their deck. Well, if you hate on Walking Dead cards and you will not sit down with someone, you are literally hating out their entire deck, right? Before the game even started with an emblem, right? So these should go to Wizards. But I don't buy half of these. I think the community is probably like less salty about this now that we have Fortnite, Street Fighter, Stranger Things. But distribution, I also think, is just a weird scapegoat. Like, Fierce Guardianship is very expensive, right?
Well,
it's distributed in a normal Magic set, right? We're not happy about that either, right? We're just not happy about expensive Magic cards, and Wizards will always make expensive Magic cards, right?
Well,
Wizards will get paid at the end of the day, whether it be a Mountain Dew equipment, whether it be Chase Mythic in Commander Legends, whether it be exclusive Secret Lair drop, they will make their money, right? So I feel that's part of the game. And if you get salty because someone played $50 Rick, well, you're gonna get really salty when someone plays like $100 Mox Diamond or whatever, right?
I do think that.
Oh, go ahead, Tomer.
Oh, well, my salt was not that. The distribution I did kind of find a little bit annoying, especially in countries where buying Secret Lairs is super expensive. Like if I have to order Secret Lairs, it's like X dollars for you guys, but for me in Canada,
the United States.
Yeah, for me in Canada, I have to pay a ludicrous amount of shipping, and then I have to pay duties on top of that. So I'm paying like double for my Secret Lairs, whereas an American, it doesn't really matter too much. But for people who aren't in America, it kind of sucks.
Just to add to that, I think the other issue is like the time limit was really short when they started, and it has improved, but I think it's tough to be like, you have 24 hours, and if you don't have $200 in your pocket to spend on Magic cards within that 24-hour period to get your playset of a Secret Lair drop, that you're just like out of luck. So I think that's a little different than like a Commander deck that is at least going to be on the shelves for 6 months or something, and you can save up for it or budget for it or whatever. So I think the FOMO like 24-hour thing, which they have improved on and usually leave them up for longer now, but I think that is part of like my issue with the distribution too.
I also want to have magic
FOMO.
but I also want to have Magic setting cards in my deck. Like if I'm not a fan of The Walking Dead, but I like the card mechanics, I like having the option of having a Magic the Gathering, lore friendly version of Lucille, in my deck, because I want to play the card, but I don't really want that card, the Lucille specifically, in my deck, like I want to have equivalent, and they're doing that with the Stranger Things. They're going to be coming out with Magic equivalent versions, and that's all I really wanted, really. Like that's the big one for me, so I'm happy with that. I didn't like the Walking Dead where like, if you don't want to play Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead, you just don't have access to that card, which I did not like. But yeah, I guess we didn't. We were kind of afraid that was going to be a super long one. But I want to hear everybody in the comment section. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening it, leave a comment. What do you think about The Walking Dead? Like now that we've had a good year to brew on it, and there's been more universes beyond and everything. Just keep it civil. Don't be jerks to people. I think that's the main takeaway is. If you're being jerks to people, you're not hurting the Wizards of the Coast. They're still getting the money. You're just being a jerk to other people, and I don't think that's cool to do in the community.
I just want to close out by like, that is the point of the salty card list, right? Like, you may not personally find these cards salty, but you need to be aware that there are others in the greater Magic community that may find them salty, that may not enjoy playing against them. Right. And if you're sitting down to play, like at the very least, if you have salty cards, you should be like, hey, I'm playing Armageddon. Do you think that's fine? Right. And if you're playing high salt cards, maybe have an alternate deck that you could play in case, if the whole group was like, yeah, Armageddon me up, let's go. Right. Or they're like, nah, I can't live through an Armageddon. Can you play something else? Like have an alternate deck in the same way that you have like multiple power level decks. Maybe if you like to play with salty cards, like have a deck with less salt. And then you can switch amongst them. But, the whole idea is to make it a fun experience for everyone, right? Like we don't, we want to win, but we want everyone to have fun as well, right? So that's why we have these debates, whether cards are salty or not, so that you can get perspective from other point of views. You may not agree with them, but at least like that's what people are thinking.
Also, if another deck is too much, like some people have just one deck, consider having a little bit of a sideboard, like if there's a couple cards that might be salt inducing. Maybe just have like 1 or 2 cards that are just cheap replacements to them that you can easily sleeve in, because I know a lot of people have been saying in the past, like, I only have 1 or 2 decks, I can't afford multiple decks or bring multiple decks to F&M or whatever. Then I highly recommend just having like 1 or 2 cards. Just be mindful of these might be some of the cards that some people find salt inducing, and maybe have a couple backups just in case.
Seriously, just have a couple extra basic lands of your colors and leave it in your deck box, because your deck's probably going to run better anyway with like 2 extra lands that you put in to replace your Armageddons or something. So, yeah.
But put some MDFCs in. What are you talking about, Seth?
Yeah, MDFCs. They're spells. All
right. I'm always for more MDFCs, so.
Yeah. All right, sweet. So that covers it, everybody. This was a bit of a longer podcast. Let us know also if you think longer podcasts are good or bad. Feedback is always useful. And that's it, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. And until next time, friends, see ya.